Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Success Sadhana. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to a program today where we'll be discussing your heart is your bank account. Your heart is a bank account with a speaker, Vaish, a veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and former monk. This is a continuation of our series, Lessons from the Golden Monk. And we are very glad to have Vaish back from his East Coast trip. So welcome back, Vaish.
Thank you very much, JM, and good to see everybody. Glad to be back on the program. Hope everyone's been well. And it's a topic today that's very practical. It's philosophical but practical also, which is nice. As my friend Radhika likes to say, he's a scholar. He's the head of the department in Utah State. We visited him a few weeks ago, teaches philosophy and history of religion. And he was talking about how a philosophy that's not accessible is considered to be useless, because what's it to you? It has to be something that we can enter into. And today's metaphor about the heart being a bank account is extremely useful, because as we move around in our relationships, I should say, as we engage in various relationships and as we move about the world, we'll come in contact with lots of people and circumstances and environments. And what we choose to take into our hearts will accumulate, just as when you're developing your financial situation, you have to have a investment plan, don't you? And it doesn't do it by itself. You actually have to put the money in and make sure it's in there. And then you have something to withdraw at a later time. And of course, with the miracle of compounded interest, could be a lot. So there's a way in which in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, talking about spiritual practice, says that even the smallest investment in your spiritual practice, he calls it su alpam. In Sanskrit, alpa means very small, and su is an intensifier. In Sanskrit, means extremely. So su alpam, even the tiniest little investment, is something that will grow in your heart. But what should you put in there? That's the question. And that's something that the Golden Monk talked about, because there are different ways that you can invest in your heart. Isn't it nice to know you got a little bank account in your heart? Carry it around with you. You can withdraw. That is, if you're a proper investor. It's good, right, JM? Okay, so first of all, let's try a little bit of introspection. I like to call it that because introspection means to look inside. And today, when we do this exercise, it's actually a kind of meditation. We'll take a few minutes to go within, and then we'll try some mantra meditation. This is one of the practices of Bhakti Yoga. It's been used for millennia. There are volumes written about the power of mantra. But once we go into a little state of introspection, I'll read you a couple of lines from some scholarly works about meditation and mantra meditation specifically. And then we can try out a couple of mantras together, even as we're here on Zoom, situated in various places around the world. This is some kind of yogic mystic power that we've attained through technology, that we're able to see each other and hear from one another from various places. It's kind of miraculous, no? So take a moment to sit up a little straighter than you were a moment ago, and you'll notice that immediately your mind comes to attention just by posture. And close your eyes. When's the last time you got to close your eyes? When you weren't going to sleep. And this is your opportunity to look inside. So be alert, but relax. And with a slightly straightened spine, not in an uncomfortable way, but in a way that you can be alert, bring your attention to your breath. And bring your breath into a regulated cadence And feel when you exhale through your nostrils, the friction of the air. So try inhaling and exhaling through your nostrils. And just notice that those two openings are there to take in air. And it's sustaining you. And take some nice, even breaths outwardly, and maybe a little more exhalation than you usually do. So the breath is a little longer, and try to do an equal count on the way in. Maybe count to 3 or 4. And as you're taking in breath, you're breathing, just gently bring your awareness to your breath again and again, wherever it goes. This is your time to just be. You don't have to become something else. You already are something that's good enough for all time. And stay relaxed, but alert. And now, notice that you can move your attention to any part of your body, what to speak of the universe, but you're acquainted with this particular body that you have for a few years. You don't get to keep it. But bring your awareness to your right knee, a place you haven't thought about probably for a long time. And just notice that you're the one who can decide at any time to transfer your attention. And now move your attention to your left ear and just feel it. And again, notice that you're the one deciding. You can move your attention anywhere you wish. And where attention goes, energy flows. Your fulcrum of power is your attention and where you choose to put it. And breathe evenly. And I'll just read you a couple sentences about mantra before we try mantra meditation. Mantras are divine presence, not symbols or names representing something beyond themselves, as with normal language. They embody actual immediate divinity. Conventional names and words such as book or pot are representational sounds established by social consensus for the purpose of communication, and they differ from one language group to another. The mantra, by contrast, puts you directly in touch with divinity. It's a sonic presence that you can directly experience. So as you're taking this respite from all the things of the world and just noticing your inner world, let's try chanting a mantra to be in touch with this sonic divinity. So I'm going to make a tune on my keyboard, and I'll repeat the mantra Om 3 times. And if you wish, behind muted mics, just Repeat it with me. And now we'll chant the mantra Go Ranga. You can follow with me as you wish. Go Ranga. Go Ranga. Gauranga. And now adding two more syllables, Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Now bring your awareness back to your breath. And notice any effects of the mantra that are lingering in your mental system, which is how it makes you feel, how it changes the environment internally, externally. And take one moment to feel gratitude for your breath. Everything we need to survive in the world is provided automatically, or with just a little bit of effort. Life's not so hard. And we can always repair to the source of real happiness, which is awareness of our consciousness and the source of our consciousness. Now, rub your palms together, create some friction, open your eyes, and we'll come back into the Zoom room. And welcome back, everybody. So, a little bit of introspection every day and mantra meditation goes a long way in your practice, and it helps you to be centered. Awareness that wherever you place your attention, which is your choice, it should be your choice, should be aware that you have that power, will determine the direction you go in your life. And now let's go into the slides, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the bank account. First thing, some of you may have read years ago Stephen Covey's book about highly effective habits of successful people, or seven habits of highly successful people. And in it, he also gives this metaphor, just as the Golden Monk did 500 years ago, about how the heart is like a bank account. And he talks about it, does Stephen Covey, in relationship to our relationships. So let's just say you have somebody in your life that you relate with on a regular basis. That's not so unreasonable to assume, right? Okay. And he points out that you can make deposits in your relationship into the other person's bank account, or you can make withdrawals. Does anybody here have somebody that they live with or relate with on a regular basis that they care about? And that's number one. We'll assume that you do, actually. You don't have to answer that. And number two, can you say what would be a deposit or what would be a withdrawal? Following that metaphor of the bank being an account. So in this sense, we're actually talking about a relationship and the other person. You can make a deposit in the other person's Heart Bank account. Heart Bank. It's a new corporation. What would be a deposit, would you say? What would it look like?
Rebecca says telling someone you love them.
Well, that's a powerful one. People don't forget that anytime soon. Those words of respect and love are a really deep deposit. Yeah.
Rashmi says deposit love and respect.
Yeah, definitely.
Rajiv says gratitude.
Like Rajiv, do you mean that when somebody you're related to, you express your gratitude towards them, and that makes a deposit in their bank account? Or
in
you're
their
making a deposit?
in their bank account, but more so in our own bank account, the gratitude to have them around us and the gratitude to be in a position to even pay attention to them and talk to them and listen to them.
Nice, nice. And Mark says, buy them a drink. Yeah, if you get somebody a nice cold drink when they're on a hot day, and they can appreciate you brought them a gift. It's one of the points that Rupa Goswami makes about bringing people gifts. These are all ways of deposit. If you do something thoughtful for somebody, like you go out of your way to leave them a note so that they're not inconvenienced or something like that. They can be tiny things or seemingly larger things, but they all make deposits. What about a withdrawal? Has anybody in a relationship ever made a withdrawal? You've taken out something in a moment of anxiety or thoughtlessness? Come on, come clean now.
Rashmi
Anger? Yeah, anger. So can you be more specific? Did you ever become angry and say something to somebody you regretted later? Was that a withdrawal? Is that what you're saying, Rashmi?
I personally haven't, but I've seen that happen where, yes, you're good with people and everything, but then, I've noticed where people say something in a moment of anger
Yeah.
that kind of hurts the other person. So that's basically, you deposited something, but then you negated that by saying something hurtful. So,
Yeah. So we can make withdrawals because we're in an angry mood. Could be cranky about something, and then let's just say somebody you care about, you snap at them,
yeah.
and maybe that makes a withdrawal, right?
Yeah.
Possible, anybody? It's possible. It could happen. So both deposits and withdrawals. So Covey's point is make sure you don't overdraw. In the times when you have the opportunity, go out of your way to make deposits, because at some point you may inadvertently withdraw. And if you take too much out and you haven't put anything in lately, you know what it's like to overdraw in a bank account, right? There's penalties and interest. What are the penalties and interest if you withdraw too much in your relationship with somebody? What happens? Practically. What do you think, Charles?
probably becomes more difficult to take those withdrawals in the future.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you keep getting further and further overdrawn, but like if you take a withdrawal from somebody, then maybe they won't feel the same towards you for a few minutes or for longer. But if you've made a lot of deposits, they may, feel like, we can. I know this person's good for it because they just accidentally took withdrawal. So the point is that there are all these. There's a balance, and we can measure it in relationships. And now let's talk, going to the slides, a little bit about the Golden Monk said about maintaining our own bank balance in our hearts. Can you go to the first slide again? Because I liked it so much. This first slide is just a reminder of the heart as a bank account, and keep asking this question: what am I putting into it? What am I depositing in my heart? And we're not talking about the physical heart, we're talking about the fact that we're sentient beings and we have a center for our consciousness. And in technical terms, talking about yoga psychology, in the Bhagavad Gita and also in the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali talks about and Krishna talks about how we accumulate images and experiences. Freud, Jung, they also talked about this, the subconscious. And so we take that in and it's recorded. It's amazing how much we record, actually. The first 7 years of our lives, we have little video cameras going and we're watching everything, taking it all in developmental psychology, children at that particular age, extremely absorbent, but we remain so throughout our lives to one extent or another. And we're taking in various kinds of images and feelings that we're taking from other people, from our association, from our sangha. So that's going into what's called our chitta, or our heart. The heart is called the chitta, or the consciousness. And so it's identified with our heart because that chakra, where it's maintained, is there in the region of the heart. That's why we have expressions like, it was heartfelt. I felt it in my heart. I thought about it, but then my heart, I had to go with my heart because we really do have a center of influence, and the heart and the accumulation of what's in there will direct which way we're going. In fact, one of the great teachers of bhakti named Ramananda Roy from 500 years ago, he was one of the close associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Golden Monk. And they used to have conversations which are recorded, very highly developed spiritual conversations. And Ramananda Roy once said that the heart is the driver of the chariot, and the chariot is the body. So what's the driver? The heart. We go where our heart takes us. So the way we develop our heart, that's the way we're going to go in life. So it's really an important question to ask oneself. What are we putting into this? I know I took a long time on this slide. Let's see the next one. Okay, so the Golden Monk talked about what is wealth. Okay, if you're extending the metaphor, so the heart is a bank. So you want to put wealth into it, right? And Sukriti, so su means good, and kriti means to do something. It's the same root as karma. Kriti means you're active in some way. So you're gonna act some way in this life. There's no way to stop acting. So if you want to do it, do well and act rightly, sukriti, that is where you get your wealth. And that's the deposit that you're making in your heart, is called sukriti. So that's what we'll call the wealth of our heart. Now, the Golden Monk then talked about this idea of sukriti, and he said there's 3 kinds. So on the very far left, we see karma kanda, or material facility. Next one is called jnana, which knowledge. That word jnana actually is cognate with our present day word in English, know, K-N-O-W. That's, you see how this is spelled, jnana? It's spelled, it looks like an N, but it's actually pronounced with a squiggle over it, nya, nya. So it's jnana. And know are, if you ever wondered why the word know is spelled K-N-O-W, it's because it comes from this word in Sanskrit. It's always, to kids, like, what are you talking about? That's kano, not no. But it means knowledge. There's a way in which we can gain knowledge, and that's what we're depositing in our bank account of our heart. And then the third kind of Secreti is we use our work, our energy for bhakti, and that deposit means love for our source. So we have karmakana, jnana, or bhakti. These three paths the Golden Monk talked about that sort of define or widen a swath to show the various kinds of human activity. Some people work hard so that they can get as much facility as possible in this world. In fact, I remember in the 1980s, some of you weren't born then, but in the 1980s, there was a bumper sticker that said, whoever dies with the most toys wins. And there's this sense that just try to get ahead in life materially as much as possible, because you only have one chance. And once that chance is over, then you missed it. And just try to do the best you can. In fact, in ancient parlance, there was a person named, actually, I forget the name of the philosopher. Maybe somebody else can remind me, but he said, beg, borrow, steal, but get ghee. Ghee was considered one of the ways to really enjoy life. It's clarified butter. Only rich people had it, but somehow or other cook with rich ingredients, starting with ghee. Beg, borrow, steal, get ghee. I see Kalyan is going to put it in the chat box. Charvak, that's right. His name was Charvak. So he comes from antiquity. So this philosophy has been around for a long time. You only live once. Just try, because it doesn't matter what you do in this life anyway, because if you can get ahead by begging, borrowing, or stealing, or lying, whatever it is, you get the most facility you possibly can, then you win. So maybe there's some fallacy in that. We'll examine that, see if that's a really good philosophy, if it works out. And then the next one he mentioned, the kind of Secreti, is jnana. And it's just to get knowledge. We're still on the other slide, just the one before. We're still looking at these three categories. So jnana means to get knowledge. And the end result of very detailed knowledge, of course, we can go into like physics. A friend of mine who got a PhD at Stanford in physics told me that a person can drill down into one little area of the universe and look very carefully for 20 years at one little aspect, a postage-sized stamp of the world, and try to analyze it, and still not know what they're looking at after 20 years. Practically, the universe we live in is inconceivable. And this is trying to get empiric knowledge of the world just by examination. And there's another kind of knowledge, which is knowledge which distinguishes ourselves from matter. Ourselves meaning that we're actually sentient beings. We're consciousness, and consciousness is a distinct energy from matter. So those who are jnanis, they're acquiring this kind of knowledge, they tend to detach themselves from the world because they say, I'm not really part of this world. I don't belong here. I'm not really, I don't mix here at all. So this kind of knowledge, or gathering knowledge, is what the Golden Monk talked about. The jnanis put that in their heart. That's what they're trying to cultivate, is a knowledge that I'm not my body. That's called in Sanskrit, aham brahmasmi, which actually means in the positive, I'm spiritual, I'm not material. And there's a difference between me and the body. Aham brahmasmi. Kalyan could put it he's a Sanskritist. He can put it in the box for us. So that's second category, the way we can cultivate. And then you get bhakti, the path of bhakti, which means that in bhakti, you're developing love for the source of everything. And so this connection to source, says the golden monk, is the source of all happiness. It's our nature to be connected. We are already connected, but we get distracted from that connection. And we think our interest is in either gaining things in the world and surrounding ourselves with material things, or we think that getting detached from things will make us happy. But the golden monk, Chaitanya, said, no, actually, we are part of the source. And when we realize that source and we have love for the source and we render service, this is called bhakti, then we're properly situated and we feel happy. And so if we can go back to those three again, and then we'll keep going on the slides. These are the three kinds of wealth. So there's a way that we work in the world to make deposits in the bank of our heart. One way may be karma kanda, positioning myself so I can get better material facility. Another way may be jnana kanda. This is the kind of investments I'm making, how to become detached from the world. And the third is the bhakti, sukriti, which means that I develop more and more awareness of my source, and I develop love for my source. Okay, let's just see if there's any questions about that, because some of the concepts, this is a premise that I'm working from, so it's important that if there's any clarification needed about the premise, any questions, that'll clarify it more. You get extra credit for questions, you know. Questions are not so easy.
Charles.
We can always depend on Charles, though. Hey, Charles.
Hello, thank you.
You're on the East Coast, yeah?
Not currently, actually. I took a quick detour to Central America.
Actually. Oh, okay. You do get around. Good to see you.
Likewise. As you were going through that, I noticed that there may be, I wanted to ask, is there a progression that connects the three different stages of Secreti there? Meaning, like, is the progression necessary to go from like material to like this higher stage of knowledge or seeking knowledge, and kind of a stage above that, letting go of the other two, but really focusing on love?
Well, it's not absolutely necessary, but sometimes people do go through that. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Bahunam janmanamante jnanavam mam prapadyate vasudeva sarvamiti sa mahatma sudurlabha. He talks about how sometimes people who are jnanis, for instance, they spend many lifetimes trying to detach themselves from the world and cultivating knowledge of the difference between matter and spirit. But after doing that and realizing its futility, then they come to this other conclusion of going into bhakti. And you know, generally when some people take up karma, there's this pendulum swing that I go after material facility, and as soon as I get enough or more than enough, then I start thinking there must be something more than this. And every one of the Beatles, they were young and they became very wealthy. Does everyone know who the Beatles are? If not, you should drop off the show right now. I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. So they talked about in various interviews that, you know, they rose to fame so quickly. They got so much wealth so quickly. And of course, you know, they were after that. But once they got there, they realized there was nothing in it. And so there's often this pendulum swing that I come into material facility and then I realize that it doesn't actually help me. I'm as frustrated as I ever was. And then the only refuge from there is to take to this detachment. So this phenomena is called Bhoga Tyaga. Kalyano put it in the box. Bhoga means material enjoyment, and Tyaga means trying to give up material things altogether. So these are two extremes. And after going through those, actually it's helpful or necessary even to get higher knowledge that there's a third path that one can be situated on, because the default is I try to enjoy the material world and then I react to the lack of enjoyment I get, the burden I feel from that, and I try to give it all up. So we need some kind of intervention of information that comes from a higher source, and that describes how we're actually something different from this material world. We are sentient beings. We don't belong in matter. Nonetheless, everything material can be used for a higher purpose and therefore transformed. So in a way, gradually people can come to a state of frustration, and that's helpful. As we've had that program on here before, frustration is the door to enlightenment. So that if you're in the right place at the right time and you get good information, then you can progress out of those. Or if you just get the good information to start with, you can become attracted to the third path of bhakti, and that is selfless service, using everything that you have in your purview in service to the original divine source, bhakti. JM put it in the chat. Charles, did that help?
That does, and thank you so much, Francesca Prabhu. You always stated so clearly and thoughtfully, and in a way that's digestible. So appreciate that.
Well, that's because you ask clear and interesting and helpful questions. Questions are the answer. It's coming out of my new book. All right, let's see the next slide.
Sure. Is it okay if I just play a short clip? We had a nice session.
Yeah.
So thanks to Aish, we had a wonderful gathering. Some of us came together. So I just wanted to play a clip and thank all the volunteers actually who came together and put up a phenomenal program. Everyone who joined, they were very grateful for it. So thank you so much for all the volunteers. I'll play a short clip, just a couple of minutes, but it gives a glimpse of how wonderful it was and how everyone enjoyed it. So just give me a second.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare
So just wanted to so I wanted to thank Mayank and Rajesh for the capturing all the moments and recording, which I was able to put together, and all the volunteers who came together for cooking and cleaning and helping all the setting up everything. So, and a special thanks to Vaish. Actually, he came early, spent time with all of the new people who came together, answered questions. He did give a short talk. We didn't record, otherwise I would have taken some clips from that. But it was a wonderful, wonderful time we all had. So thank you so much, Vaish, for giving us an excellent time together.
Thank you, JM. You and Pavani create the space. That's your penchant, for making space for others. It was really nice. It was a nice gathering. A lot of us hadn't met in person, so we had a heartfelt gathering there. I'm still remembering that and looking forward to the next one. And this is part of the process. I mean, we've been meeting on Zoom, partly out of necessity, but whenever you get a chance to meet in person and have a little philosophy and some of the practice of mantra meditation, then it goes deeply into the heart and you feel it. It's what the golden monk called Cheto Darpana Marjanam. And actually, you feel like you went through a car wash. You come out feeling revived or clean, I should say, and also revived, like a little plant that's withering. There was a book I saw on a shelf that I related to once. It said 12 house plants even you can't kill. And, if you've ever seen a poor little plant that starts to wither and then you rush over and you give it a good watering and then it just springs back to life. That's what that practice feels like, chanting together these mantras. Very powerful. So the reason that material facility doesn't satisfy us is because it comes and goes. And as Maslow pointed out, we have to have a modicum of material facility in order to then be able to turn our minds to higher subject matters. For instance, you have to have shelter, some sense of security in relationships and so forth, food. And once you get past a certain level of material acquisitions, say sociological studies, there's a lack of return, diminishing returns. You're not actually getting happier just by material facility. And so there's this sense of trying for karma kanda, or making that your goal in life, putting that in your bank account, more and more ability to gain material facility. It's not satisfying. So it's actually a source of distress. And then practical knowledge, or the cultivation of knowledge, especially for detaching oneself from the world, or getting material knowledge, develops into a false sense of comfort. Now, my friend who's a professor I told you about a little earlier, he was telling me how academics who are fully invested, really bright people who are studying all the time, he said they get really attached to their knowledge. That's their main thing. He said they can forego all other material pleasures, but they can't give up their theories and so forth. And living in a very cerebral way, and also coming to the point of seeing the difference between matter and spirit, and trying to detach from matter, is also not completely satisfying, said the golden monk, because ultimately we want to do something. We want to love somebody, and just detachment won't do it. So the jnana kanda, or just filling one's heart with this information, won't satisfy us. So let's see what will. According to the golden monk, love for and service to source is actual happiness. So there is a source to everything. And this book, Sri Upanishad, it's one of the ancient books. The Upanishads are said to be thousands of years old. And they talk about how everything comes from a source. the first verse in this book is very popular. You'll see it in yoga studios all over the world. It says, Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vishishyate. So the word Purnam means complete. Our source is complete in itself, and everything comes from it is also complete. And just reading a little part from the commentary from this book, the Sri Ishopanishad, this phenomenal world is also complete in itself. The 24 elements of which this material universe is a temporary manifestation are arranged to produce everything necessary for the maintenance and subsistence of this universe. No other unit in the universe need make an extraneous effort to try to maintain the universe. The universe functions on its own time scale, which is fixed by the energy of the complete whole. And when that schedule is completed, this temporary manifestation will be annihilated by the complete arrangement of the complete whole. All facilities are given to the small complete units, namely living beings. Raise your hand if you're a living being. Okay, I'm just checking. To enable them to realize the complete whole. All forms of incompleteness are experienced due to incomplete knowledge of the complete whole. So in bhakti, it's not cultivating knowledge that we are just separate from matter and being detached, but it's actually cultivating knowledge in the beginning that we're connected to something greater than ourselves. What is that something is the great subject matter of bhakti. And there are many things written about it. But for one who starts to realize his or her connection to the complete whole, there's a sense of spiritual happiness. And that's indicated by the next little section I'm going to read to you, because this is part of bhakti. It's hearing from these sources of knowledge. And this one's from the book called Bhagavad Gita, which is on the back cover of the Gita I have. Mine's a little frayed because I read it so much, but there's several quotes. One's from Henry David Thoreau. He says, in the morning, I bathe my intellect in the stupendous and cosmogonal philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, in comparison with which our modern world and its literature seem puny and trivial. And Ralph Waldo Emerson, his friend, said, I owed a magnificent day to the Bhagavad Gita. It was the first of books. It was as if an empire spoke to us. Nothing small or unworthy, but large, serene, consistent. The voice of an old intelligence, which in another age and climate had pondered and thus disposed of the same questions which exercise us. So here is an excerpt from the Bhagavad Gita. Actually, it's a verse. And Krishna speaking to his student, Arjuna, he says, one whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward, is actually the perfect mystic. Such a person is liberated in the Supreme and ultimately attains the Supreme. And here's a short commentary. Unless one is able to relish happiness from within, how can one retire from the external engagements meant for deriving superficial happiness? A liberated person enjoys happiness by factual experience. They can therefore sit silently in any place and enjoy the activities of life from within. Such a liberated person no longer desires external material happiness. This state is called Brahma Bhuta, attaining which one is assured of perfection. So all signs point towards this sense of connection and the happiness that arises. Connection to whom? Our original source, the complete whole. So there's a few more slides, and then we'll take some reflections. So spiritual practice, according to the Golden Monk, means to fill the bank account of your heart with bhakti sukriti. And there's a few ways to do that. Doesn't it look nice, the heart filling up like that? Kind of like that. Okay, here's some wealth deposits for you. One is Sangha. Sangha means association. Spend time with those who are spiritually wealthy, sadhus. A sadhu means somebody who's practicing sadhana, which means a spiritual practice. The name of this show is Success Sadhana. Anything you want to get good at, you have to practice, right? So if there are those who have been practicing for some time and you can hang out with them, then you'll start to learn how to do it too. I have a music teacher, spend time as much as possible with him. And just by his association, all his learning, it gets transferred from his heart to my heart. And if you find bhakti yogis, those who have advancement, they have that sense of love for the Supreme, and you see it in their actions, the way they live, and you just spend time. That's called Sangha. And then the other aspect, the first two parts of bhakti are called Shravana, Kirtana. So Shravana means to hear transcendental sound vibration. When you saw that little film clip, this simple process of chanting mantra, we also did it at the beginning. This is transcendental sound, which I remind you from this handbook on bhakti. Mantras are divine presence. That's Presence. They're also presence, as in a gift, but that means divine presence, not symbols or names representing something beyond themselves, as with normal language. They're directly spiritual. So Shravana, that, and also we heard from this book, the Upanishads. We also heard from the Bhagavad Gita. There are many others. And by hearing from these, this is called hearing transcendental sound vibration. And then kirtan. Kirtan means to then express it with your own voice. So you hear it, then you repeat it. And then when you do that, that's called kirtan. So for instance, with the chanting, you hear it, and then you repeat it back. And when you repeat it, then you get the benefit of hearing it again. And you're also expressing it by speaking it. So you get this powerful effect of hearing and then repeating. So these are three ways to develop wealth. And if you have this as your sadhana or your daily practice, then you'll notice that your heart starts to fill up with this bhakti sukriti. And that's what the Golden Monk said is the real wealth of life. Time for reflections. Now you're all on the hot seat because you have to reflect something back. Well, you don't have to, but I deeply appreciate it. Any questions? We still have 5 whole minutes. Or reflection. Yes, Rebecca.
Hi, Hare Krishna Maharaj.
You're still muted. But we can read lips, so you can do it either way.
Uh-oh.
No, you're okay.
Can you
I
hear
think
me
I
now?
just,
Oh, can you hear me now?
yes.
JM,
Okay.
how
so
come I
I
can't
just
hear you
wondered-
or Rebecca? Uh-oh. Something's gone awry here. Uh-huh. Try now.
Can you hear me?
Okay, now I can hear you now. Somehow I got muted. Please go ahead.
I was just wondering, with Shravana, I've always considered like reading, if I'm reading Srila Prabhupada's books every day, I'm hearing, but you made me wonder, should I be reading them out loud to myself, or is Shravana more like hearing the actual mantras?
Either way is okay. I do have a friend who every day on the internet reads aloud for, like a half hour, an hour.
Is that
And-
Keshava Maharaj?
Yeah, Keshav Bharti. And he always
I've been
says,
listening to him.
you got to read aloud. So if he's listening, I better say that. I do both. And if I find sometimes it's nice to sit and just hear in your mind by reading the pages. I mean, language is just, written word is an abstraction of speech. So you're kind of hearing it when you're reading it also. But there's no heavy restriction one way or the other, but you can try both and see how it goes.
Thank you.
One thing that's very helpful is if you record what you're reading, you read it out loud, then you can play it later too. I'm taking a course where I have to answer questions at the end of every section, and I have to know them very well. And so I I record what I'm reading and I listen back to it frequently so that it becomes ingrained. So when I sit down for the test, then I can answer the questions. But it's a nice technique. That way you get multiple use out of your reading aloud. Thanks, Rebecca. Okay, other reflections, anything you heard that you're taking away when you get off the program and you turn around and somebody, your roommate or somebody else, grabs you by the arm and says, what was that guy talking about? This is the one thing you're going to say.
We have few coming on the chat box. Vicky says, after depositing Sangha, Shravana and Kirtana at the glowing sunlight afternoon, in the presence of dear devotees, I closed my eyes that night and instantly my heart bank took me back to that sweetness. When our wealth accumulates, it can naturally overflow.
I like that a lot. And that's kind of answers Mark's question a little bit too at the bottom. You know, when Vicky talks about the sense of overflowing, you know, you put so much in there and then of course there's plenty of room. So it's not like it filled up. I can't take anymore, but there is a sense of overflowing because spiritual mathematics says the more you distribute it, the more it increases, which is interesting also. But when you do have it, then you have it to distribute. It usually comes out in a sense of enthusiasm, and people see it in your countenance. And one of the ways that people notice spiritual advancement, or that it's noted in the ancient Bhakti scriptures, is that if you're very steady, it means that you've got a good bank balance. This is called nishta, or steadiness. It's really hard to be steady unless you're actually advanced. And that means you got a good bank balance in your heart. Some people come and go in any practice, but those who are very serious and they've invested in something very seriously and they have a bank balance, they can stick to it.
Yeah, Rajesh, go ahead. You're on mute for some reason, Rajesh.
Yeah, something wrong with your microphone, and it's not me this time.
No, sorry, we are still not able to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
now we heard. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I felt the Sangha is very powerful because, in that presence, we always get upliftment. You don't need to do there, you just need to be there. In other cases, you have to put some, extra energy. So just being there, I find it very, you can have much, your account balance, you can grow by being there.
Yeah, showing up. I think Woody Allen said showing up is 50% of success. That's a good point. Okay, Rajiv, for the close.
I just wanted to add that you mentioned something about materials starting to feel or become uninteresting and eventually a burden. That is a very difficult stage in life, or has been a difficult stage in life for me, where you don't know if things are becoming a burden because there's something right or something wrong happening with you. But thank you for sharing that, because I think now I'll treat that as a good sign, a sign of something positive happening.
Thanks, Rajiv. You always bring things to the positive. That's your nature. We deeply appreciate it. The effulgence you bring to this show. Thank you very much, everybody. I just got back from a trip. I was in Colorado and then Michigan, and I confirmed it because I met two colleagues who frequent the Himalayas, and they both told me, without me prompting them, that the yogis come out of their caves at intervals, and when they see one another on the high peaks of the Himalaya, they wave to each other in a special way. They put both arms in the air and they call out this phrase. It's spelled H-A-R-I, which Hari means like the supreme and one who takes away all your obstacles, and Bol means to chant. So they say Hari Bol to encourage one another, and they yell it out really loud across the mountain peaks, and then it echoes, so you can hear it from time to time. So I just saw it as an experiment, since we're in a little cave-like existence here, through Zoom, we can try it out as we leave. What do you think?
Yes.
Haribo!
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 Haribo! Haribo!
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Haribol.